Byleth's Nightmare. Written by T.G. TV, 2023. Read by Arashi. Under the bleak canopy of twilight, Byleth's heart thudded against his ribcage, each beat echoing the dread and despair that knotted in his gut. He knelt on the damp, cold ground, clutching his father, Geralt, in a desperate embrace as life slowly ebbed from his body. Geralt's armor was slick with blood, a stark crimson that seemed almost black under the fading light. Byleth's mind screamed for a solution, his fingers tracing the intricate crest that had once given him the power to rewind time, to undo such fatal moments. But as he locked eyes with Thelas, whose interference has sealed his father's fate, despair took root. Geralt's gaze, heavy with the impending shadow of death, met his son's.
"I'm sorry. Looks like I'm gonna have to leave you now,"
he murmured, his voice a raspy shadow of its former strength. The word struck Byleth like a physical blow, tears welling up for the first time in his life, blurring his vision as they spilled over. As he closed his eyes against the pain, a gentle touch, soft as a whisper, caressed his cheek. A female voice, tinged with agony, yet achingly familiar, whispered, "Professor." His eyes snapped open, only to be met with another visage of tragedy. Edelgard, the fierce emperor, and the woman he loved, her own body, grievously wounded, her blood mingling with the earth that would soon claim her. "I wanted to walk with you, my love," Edelgard gasped, her hand feebly reaching out to touch the blood-stained sword that had mistakenly taken her life. Around them, the Knights of Sero celebrated what they saw as a victory, their cheers a cruel and haunting cacophony to Byleth's ears. "No, no, 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 no!" Byleth's shout tore through the twilight, a vain plea against the irreversible reality. He attempted to reach back through time, to alter this nightmare landscape. But the magic failed him, leaving him nothing but the harrowing image of Edelgard's lifeless eyes, staring up at him. "I'm sorry," he sobbed, his voice breaking. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Elle!" Then the harsh grip of reality loosened, and Byleth found himself gasping for air in the tangled sheets of his bed, his body slick with sweat. It had been a nightmare, a torturous vision. But the relief was short-lived. "Byleth!" Edelgard's concerned voice pierced the remnants of his terror. He turned, facing his wife, who had been stirred from sleep by his cries. Her eyes, full of worry, searched his. It's nothing. I'm fine," he lied, his voice barely above a whisper. But Edelgard knew better. She could see the fear that haunted him, a new and unsettling shadow over the stoic man she knew. "When I see my husband sweating like this, it is something to be worried about." Her hand reached for his shoulder, her touch meant to be comforting. "Did you have a nightmare?" Byleth wiped his brow, his breaths slowly steadying. "Yes, but it's nothing to be concerned about, Elle. There's nothing to worry about." Edelgard's expression hardened slightly, her voice gentle, but firm. "Well then, if it's nothing to worry about, you can tell me then, my love." Byleth knew there was no escaping this. The resolute glint in Edelgard's eyes was one he had come to know intimately. It was the look of an empress who would stop at nothing for answers. He sighed deeply, his hand tightening on the red and gold blanket they shared. "It started with my father's death," Byleth admitted, his voice trembling slightly. He cast his gaze down, unable to meet her eyes.
I tried to save him, El. I tried to use the crest's power to rewind time, to undo what had happened. But your uncle, Thalos, he blocked my chance to save him. No matter how many times I tried, no matter how much I willed it, I couldn't change his fate.
Edelgard's lips parted as though to speak, but she stopped herself, her hand covering her mouth. Her eyes softened, yet sadness clouded her expression. "I see," she murmured, "but there is more to it, isn't there?" Her voice was quiet, almost hesitant, but her tone left no room for denial. Byleth's knuckles turned white as he clutched the blanket tighter. He tried to avoid Edelgard's gaze, but her silent patience, her unwavering presence, drew the truth from him.
"Yes,"
he whispered, barely audible. He finally looked up at her, his eyes glistening with unshed tears.
"After I lost my father, I saw you."
His voice broke, a single tear escaping down his cheek.
"You were there, El, lying on the ground, your blood on my sword. I saw what would have happened if I had chosen to defend Rhea. Instead of you, the Knights of Saros were cheering, celebrating your death."
A sob caught in his throat, and he turned away, ashamed to let her see him so broken.
"The fear of losing you, of losing this life we've built, it's unbearable. El, I don't want to lose you or our children. I can't lose this family. You are the love of my life."
Byleth's trembling hand moved to rest gently on her stomach. Edelgard had been pregnant for 4 weeks with their second child, and the thought of losing any part of this precious family weighed on him like an anchor. His voice was barely above a whisper as he choked out,
"I can't. I won't lose any of you."
Edelgard's expression melted into one of profound love and sorrow. She opened her arms, and Byleth collapsed into her embrace, his head resting against her chest as she gently stroked his hair. "You won't lose us, Byleth," Edelgard said softly, her voice carrying a quiet strength. "I don't intend to leave this world any time soon. Those who slither in the dark are gone. Rhea is gone. We defeated them together. Fodland is at peace, my love. No harm will come to us." Byleth closed his eyes, her words soothing the storm inside him.
"I suppose that's true,"
he murmured, his voice softer now, more at peace. Edelgard, however, could sense there was more. She cupped his face in her hands, tilting his chin until their eyes met. "Byleth," she said gently, but with unyielding determination, "remember our promise. We agreed to share our burdens. It's part of being married. Please, don't keep things from me. I want to help you. I want to carry this with you. Don't shut me out, my love." Byleth's heart ached at the sincerity in her voice. He leaned closer, their foreheads touching.
"El,"
he whispered. "Promise me," she said, her voice barely audible, but resolute. "Promise me you'll let me be there for you. Always."
"I promise,"
Byleth whispered, and their lips met in a kiss, tender and filled with the weight of their shared fears and unspoken love. The sound of a small voice broke the moment.
Mama? Papa?
They turned to see their 4-year-old daughter, Clancy, standing in the doorway, clutching a stuffed bear. Her lilac eyes, a perfect blend of her parents', were wide with fear. Edelgard's voice softened immediately. Clancy, sweetheart, what are you doing up so late? Clancy hesitated, shifting nervously.
I had a bad dream.
Edelgard glanced at Byleth, a knowing smile playing on her lips. At least their daughter knew when to talk about her fears. Byleth rose from the bed and scooped Clancy into his arms. Come here, princess. Do you want to sleep with us tonight? Clancy nodded, clutching her bear tightly. Byleth carried her back to bed, and Edelgard tucked her between them, smoothing her silver hair away from her face. What was your dream about, sweetheart? Edelgard asked gently.
Monsters try to take you away,
Clancy whispered, tears brimming in her eyes. Edelgard's heart ached at the sight. She leaned down and kissed her daughter's forehead. Don't worry, darling. Teddy is safe. Papa and I will make sure of it. Now, let's get some sleep, okay? Clancy nodded, snuggling into the blankets. Edelgard smiled at Byleth, her expression one of serene contentment. She whispered to him, Remember what this path has given you. Byleth looked at his family, his heart swelling with love. He felt a familiar presence beside him.
She's right, you know,
came Sothis' voice in his mind.
You chose this path, and look at what you have now. You've achieved so much, child.
Byleth nodded, a small smile tugging at his lips. You're right. And even if I could go back, I wouldn't change a thing. Sothis' voice softened.
Good. Now rest, child. You've earned it.
Byleth reached out, intertwining his fingers with Edelgard's as they lay next to their daughter. He closed his eyes, peace finally settling over him. Edelgard noticed his hand and squeezed it gently. In her mind, she whispered, Good night, my love. As the family drifted into a peaceful sleep, the nightmare shadow was replaced by the warmth of the life they had built together, a testament to their strength, love, and shared hope for the future.